Welcome to the Rise and Hoot podcast. We've got episode 6 coming at y'all. Yeah.
Alright.
Just have
Too
that on.
long.
No, I mean, I've had that on repeat in my brain.
Yeah.
I feel like I think I sent it to you or you sent it to me, the John Rothstein's wife, like just saying like, he
Oh, you
just
sent it
walks
to me.
around the house, like whispering under his breath, like,
Yeah.
this is March,
This
this
is
is
March.
March.
Yeah.
So that's us, but just with the March Madness like CBS basketball theme song just
Yeah.
playing like in our brains, just like
Yeah.
da-na-na-na.
Like, there's not many things that get that adrenaline rolling more than like that when the selection show first pops on and that first Thursday and when the CBS like theme music is just chills. I would like to
All guys
experience
want.
it. I would like to experience it on a Saturday when BYU's on the second round. We've experienced that like twice in our life. So
Yeah.
hopefully we can experience it more than just a Thursday when BYU's in the tournament.
Yeah. This year might be the
What
one, you know.
yeah.
I
One
was
of
gonna
these
say
years
too,
my
those Capital One commercials also do it for me. Like, you know, those are just airing all March Madness long
I know.
with
Yeah. I wonder if they really like make money like on like advertising. People are like, I'm gonna switch my bank to Capital One now. Like maybe just the really maybe we're not sickos enough, like true hoop sickos. Like unless do you have Capital One?
I don't.
Okay, yeah, neither do
Unless is
I.
the Costco credit card cap? No, that's City.
No, that's City.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
come
yeah,
on,
I don't.
why'd you even? You should know that.
I know
Uh,
that. I should know that. I know.
okay, you're just testing me. I see you.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I'm gonna go now.
yeah.
I was
One of
literally
my
thinking about that with the commercials though. There was like the progressive Little Pig commercial where he's like yelling "we" in the car the whole time, and
yeah.
I was telling Tina, I was like, that commercial's from like 10 years ago. So I was like, why are they like? I was thinking about that with the commercial. I was like, I just don't understand, like, because it doesn't matter what channel you're on. It's like the same 5 commercials kind of get worked in every year,
Yeah.
like
Like the Cheez-Its
80%.
commercial for college football, like, oh,
Yeah,
this
it's
one the
the
cheesiest
equivalent.
coach. Like that's been on for like 6 years running.
But I guess it's like just they find some that get the job done. Like you said,
Yeah.
they must look at the stats every year and just be like,
Just say, hey, run it back.
Chuck and Jennifer Gardner are just getting all these people to join Capital One every year. So
Yeah, just run it back.
just run it back. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I guess before we get into it, so something kind of funny I was thinking. So Utah obviously just hired Alex Jensen as their head coach, which I think will be a good hire. Like I think he'll be good.
It
But
was a
so
hire that I didn't like. If you hear your rival make a hire and you kind of go, ugh, I don't like. It makes you feel bad a little bit. It makes me feel bad a little bit, not a lot, but I'm like, I would have way rather them hire, I don't know, another Utah State head coach. But like,
yeah.
that's how you kind of know. Okay, it's probably a pretty good hire.
Yeah, I think it'll be good. But so today's Monday night we're recording. So Monday they had his introductory press conference, and that they decided to put it in the Huntsman Center, so a 15,000 seat arena. They opened up to the public and really pushing it on social media. So I think they're hopefully going for like a Kentucky type Mark Pope press conference where every seat's full, lines out the door.
No
And again,
curtains.
maybe people will call this rent free or whatever. I don't care. Like I'm a sicko for college basketball. I watch more Utah college basketball than Utah fans. I've watched VCU this year, so like I don't care. I watch a lot of college basketball. I'm interested in Utah. Like they're recruiting, it applies to BYU. So after I was curious, I saw someone post a YouTube video of the link of the press conference. I watched the first couple minutes. And the first couple minutes when they started, they showed like the camera was like panning to like the crowd. Is literally the band was the only seats in there. It was the band. The first minute was the band and the cheerleaders cheering, and like there's literally nobody in the crowd. They had some seats on the floor. Like I saw a Ute Zone reporter estimate there was 100 to 150 people there. Which is like literally less people than Kevin Young gets for his coach's show, like every single week. It's just like they had to feel like such idiots to like put in the Huntsman Center, like instead of just putting it in some like room on like some conference room on campus. Like you could have put it in the Tanner
The
building.
press room.
Yeah, and people, whatever Utah's equivalent of the Tanner building is, like what they could have done one of the small. They wouldn't even need the auditorium, one of those auditorium rooms. But it's just like It's just like I was cackling. It was just like such a poverty program. It's like,
It's
come
bad,
on,
dude.
like they had to feel so stupid. Like Alex Jensen when he walked in, he's like, whoa, what?
Yeah, he's
I
like,
honestly, they probably felt embarrassed. Like I would have felt embarrassed.
oh
Like he did
yeah.
this whole thing, like you'd
But
hyping
it's
up,
a
like yeah,
bad
you're,
look. It's a
yeah.
bad look.
It is. Like last year BYU, the Kevin Young press conference, it was invite only. Like it was like I don't know if BYU would have filled every seat in the Marriott Center, like because but I mean there was been a ton of excitement for Kevin Young if it was open to fans. So it's just I don't
And
know.
even
It's
then, the
just
invite only is still more than. And it was a who's who, right? Like I remember watching that, and you're like, they
yeah.
had most of the team was there, a
Yeah.
lot of former players, former
There was probably like a
coaches.
thousand people there, honestly.
Yeah, it was a
Just
good
like
turnout, but it
yeah.
was much more like selective. Like you kind of
Yeah.
recognized a lot of the people that were there and their
Yeah.
family members, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah,
So
it's people like Danny Ainge, Jimmer, you, like the who's
yeah,
who. So, because you were the second speaker after Kevin Young, like Kevin Young, right? Then
yeah.
Kevin Young, and then Ryan Rasmussen. So,
They
yeah,
cut the feed because it was like I was only speaking to the people there. Like
yeah, they
that
didn't
was
want it. Yeah, that was
yeah
cool. Yeah,
that was in my contract, So
yeah, yeah. Anyways, I mean, it's not a Utah basketball podcast, but I'll take digs every once in a while, and I
oh
like to
yeah,
see what Utah's. Well, we don't recruit against them as much as we used to, but it's like there's still some players we'll go head to head, and it's fun to see them lose. So we'll
oh
see.
yeah.
I think he'll be a good coach, but yeah, it was
But I
interesting.
mean, you love to see it. Great start for us. Great start to his. He was like sitting up there, like thinking, Mark,
Yeah, Mr. Cuban.
Mr. Cuban. I know. Actually, you don't even own the team
Yeah,
really anymore.
yeah.
So
Kyrie's injury's not that bad, right? His
yeah,
ACL, will be, and then AD should be
I
good.
think he'll
Like,
be back in like a year and a half. Like
yeah, it should be good. Yeah, oh man.
Luca, are we getting Luca back? Like, were they gonna
Yeah,
trade him back?
yeah. Oh man.
It was too good.
Yeah.
Another amazing in the world of college basketball was West Virginia's governor put together like an official press conference, basically like he called the NCAA the National Corrupt Athletic Association, which
There's such good about college sports. Like only like in college basketball and college football where you get stuff like you literally get like a state governor, lieutenant governor, whatever, doing stuff like this.
literally like calling out an entire organization because the school in his state got snubbed for March Madness.
Yeah.
And he honestly might have like when I was watching the selection
And
show and they
they
were like,
absolutely got snubbed.
"Oh yeah, well yeah, they got snubbed," but then it's like, but like it wasn't just that like a different team got put in; it was the head of the selection committee is the AD at North Carolina,
Yeah, and they were the last
and
team in.
and they were the team that pushed them out, and it was just like I was like watching that and I was like, this is such a bad look. Like
Yeah.
that happens like with the college football, like some of the selection shows or like even just the weekly reveals where there's like some funny business a little bit
Mhm.
going on and they put the patsy out there, right, to kind of like say like, oh yeah, like it's a hard decision to make, but we just felt like, right, like for this team they like the strength of
Yeah.
schedule, but for a different team they like how they
Yeah.
look on the field.
Yeah.
And then they just roll out like they didn't even have the self-awareness to be like, let's like not have him out there. Let's put like the co-chair or like the number two. Like
Yeah.
they rolled him out front and center.
He's like,
To,
sup?
yeah, I was like, that takes a
Dang.
lot of cojones
Yeah.
to do that. And it was,
Yeah.
I just felt like he was just lying to the camera the whole time. Like,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
we had a vote before this game, and we said that North Carolina would be out if there wasn't a bid thief, but then, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So I mean, he had some ground to stand on, I think, but just the fact that yeah, he put together the whole press conference. He had like a minute rant, just just going at the NCAA.
Yeah.
Like you said, that's the kind of stuff that like you see it, you're like, I would never have expected to see this, and I
No.
love that it happened.
Yeah. I mean, you don't see that in the NFL or NBA. It's like college basketball, West Virginia. It's just, yeah. I mean, I feel for them. It's
I
a
do.
bummer, but anyways,
It
sucks to be
happens.
them, but
Yeah,
not us.
couldn't be me. Yeah,
Yeah.
couldn't be the Cougs. And so, but yeah. So speaking of the Cougs, the top six seed, right,
Yeah.
in the tournament.
Yeah, one seed away from being a five, which would have been fun. But BYU got Denver, which I mean, I'd almost rather take being a 5 seed and playing in Providence. I'd rather take, I think, almost playing a 6 seed in Denver than a 5 seed playing in like Providence back east.
And just avoiding, it's tough because I know the 6-11 I think is like a 50-50, like as
Yeah,
of
since
late. It's like
2018.
it's
Yeah.
pretty much just like a dead heat, which makes sense because it's kind of that borderline area where
Yeah. You got
you're
the
not
top mid-major
always
teams versus
exactly.
like mid versus like power conference teams, which are like a 6 seed because they have a lot of good wins, even though they've lost like 10, 11 games.
Yeah. So you're getting those teams that have won a lot, so it is a tough spot, but there's something about the 5-12 that you kind of hate. I don't know, that mentally
It's
you're like,
historically that's in people's minds.
yeah,
Yeah.
even though I know the odds are better for the
Yeah.
5 seed than the 6 seed. So,
Uh,
but I think I'm with you. Like, I think being closer to, I mean, I had friends that like as soon as that got announced, it was like they're like, okay, I can't make it for Thursday, but if we win, I'm gonna go on Saturday. Like, people, it's not a far
What is
drive.
it's what like I mean neither one of us live or grew up in Utah. I think it's like a 7 or depending it's like 7ish hour drive depending where you are in Salt Lake, depending where you are like in the Wasatch front.
Salt Lake to Denver is an 8 hour
Okay.
drive.
Yeah. I think someone posted a screenshot there a little south of Provo, probably like Spanish Fork area. It was like 7 hours from Provo to Denver. So I mean very doable. Yeah, BYU wins. I think I agree. BYU wins Thursday. I think a lot of people will, depending when the game is Saturday, because BYU wins Thursday. The tip times for Saturday will be announced Thursday night or Friday morning. So at that time, people are like, okay, well, you're gonna leave Friday night, or if the game is late enough on Saturday, hey, it's like, hey, we'll just wake up Saturday, go. We'll either get a hotel there or we'll just go do it down and back. Like 7 hours
Yeah.
in my mind is like very doable to see a BYU game.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I did that with my daughter when BYU played SMU in football. It's about a 5.5 hour, five and a half to get from where I am up into Dallas. And so we just left like Thursday early, late morning, early afternoon, got there, watched the game, spent the night, and then drove back the next morning. So,
Yeah.
and that was just for, just a regular season game. But so I think, yeah, you get into like potential round of 32, getting into Sweet 16. Definitely worth it. I mean, you and I would probably try to pull something off like that if we were living closer to the venue.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Denver from Seattle I think is like a 21-hour drive, so a little out of my
a
wheelhouse
a
there.
little too far.
Yeah, and then I'm traveling for work next week, so it's a little too close to everything.
Yeah, it happens. But I mean, if BYU's in the Final Four, I live here in San Antonio, so
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, that's kind of what
as-
I'm banking on
I
at
have
this
to,
point.
yeah, I have to go. If BYU goes to the Final Four, I think I have to. I mean, it's never happened.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
I mean,
My
my demand curve is like perfectly inelastic. If BYU's ever an international championship
Yeah.
of football and basketball,
it's
like,
just it's no question. Like I will be there. Like
yeah, yeah, sell the house, dude. Do whatever it takes. Yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Well, what's your initial reaction, Robbie, to us drawing VCU? I know I saw some of your tweets about it. Solid team. What are your
Yeah.
initial thoughts?
Yeah, they are good. I think people have a lot of initial thoughts, but I've kind of delved into them since then. I have watched a little bit of them this year, so I think a lot of people, if you're watching this, you're pretty into BYU basketball, so you're probably pretty aware of the scouting report. I mean, they're defensive-oriented team with solid offensive metrics. Like they're number one in the nation in effective field goal percentage. I think they're top. I think they're number 30 in 3-point percentage defense and number 4 in 2-point percentage defense. So they defend really well, and they force turnovers. They're top 30 nationally in forcing turnovers. But they force turnovers like a little differently than, say, Houston or Iowa State. Whereas like those teams, they'll blitz BYU and trap BYU off ball screens and double teams. Iowa State doesn't do that as much. Like Iowa State's defense, like they're different than a lot of teams that BYU play. They really focus on guarding the paint while still being good at the 3-point line. So like they'll every time BYU gets a touch in the post, that they'll crash and double team. So like that's one thing they really do. They really prioritize taking away the paint. It's a good defense. Like they have like 3 6'10" guys. They rotate in the front court. They're good shot blockers. Their guards are good. Then offensively, they're not quite as good. Like their offensive numbers don't pop off the page. Like one thing they do really good is rebound the ball. Like they rebound about a third of their misses. It's like their top 15 nationally offensive rebound percentage. Again, like their front court trio is really good. Then they shoot the ball. Like they're not a great 3-point shooting team, but so this is like what's interesting about this game. BYU and VCU, they shoot a lot of threes. Like about half of both of the team's attempts are from 3-point range, but BYU shoots the three a lot better. So that does go in BYU's favor. So I'll get into a little more, but high level, yeah, good team. I mean, they're 28-6. Didn't have played the strongest schedule this year. I was looking, they only played 7 teams in the Ken Palm Top 100, and they were 4-3 against those teams. And then BYU's the highest ranked team they played this year. Like, the highest ranked team they played this year was Colorado State, who was 41, and then BYU's 24 in Ken Palm. So it's a big step up in competition for them, but it was also a big step up in competition for Duquesne last year. So that's kind of high level. So the defensive focus.
80,
I know,
right? Like
that's
in Ken Palm last year, and
I know. Last year, I was so confident BYU would win last year. I mean,
I
BYU.
feel like
I mean,
everyone was with the
I know, but
Duquesne. Like it was like
yeah, like BYU should have been a 5 seed last year, but Sunday play dropped them to a 6 seed. But the committee threw BYU a bone by giving Duquesne to BYU. Like Duquesne was only in because they won the Atlantic 10 tournament. They wouldn't have been an automatic qualifier. Whereas VCU, they probably would have been the last team in as an at-large. Maybe not because North Carolina and the AD probably would have found a way to keep them out.
that might have been nixed already.
Yeah, there would have been the West Virginia governor having an alliance this morning on the Virginias being left out. VCU is 30 in Ken Palm. Duquesne is 88 in Ken Palm, and they're both 11 seeds. Like last year, I was confident. It was like on the same 11 seed line, you had Duquesne, it was 88 in Ken Palm, and you had New Mexico last year, was also an 11 seed. New Mexico was 29 in Ken Palm. I'm like, wow, BYU caught the biggest break ever. Like Duquesne's one of the weakest 11 seeds in recent memory. And even though BYU lost, that still holds true. Like that was arguably the most embarrassing tournament loss for BYU in their basketball history. Like,
yeah,
it was bad. So like, I'm hoping this year reverses the odds. Like Duquesne is a good 11 seed. Like that's some of my high level takeaways.
VCU is.
Sorry, VCU. VCU. They're good 11 seed, good team, but it is a big step in a competition. Like I think there's some good things working in BYU's favor here, some things that will be tough, but those are kind of my long-winded, I suppose, just kind of initial thoughts. What are you thinking about this matchup? How BYU responds, about VCU and everything?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. It's always, I feel like when I watch the tournament, the teams that are really like fun to watch, that are those like double digit seeds, are those teams that don't have a lot of losses, like VCU. Just like there's a big difference, I feel like, between obviously, like we said, like a Duquesne or kind of someone like a lower seed that ends up winning their tournament. Sometimes they're playing with house money and they play well, but I think there's something to be said about those teams that, like a VCU, that just they win a lot. I think that does make up for, like you mentioned, maybe not playing the best competition, maybe not having like playing in the deepest league, having the most experience playing high level teams. But I think it also kind of builds them in terms of like they're not used to losing, they're used to winning. They feel confident. I think in pretty much every game they play, they're going to go into it thinking, hey, like, we can compete. We're used to winning. We know how to win. That being said, though, I mean, I do feel like this BYU team is different. I don't know if I like or hate that a lot of national pundits say the same thing. It feels similar to, right, like the COVID year that people were talking about BYU, like this is a Sweet 16 team. This team is hot. This team is like getting hot at the right moment. It's felt very similar the way we've surged this last month or so across, both the Big 12 tournament. I feel like we've had a good showing there. Yeah, you lose to Houston, but guess what? There's 16 teams in the conference, and 15 of them are going to lose in the tournament. It's only one team is going to make it, and Houston, they are the best team in our conference, and they won the tournament. I don't take a whole lot of stock in the fact that we had a really bad first half, or for like some bad stretches in the first half. Outside of some weak stretches, I think we played really well, and I just don't see the team like giving us a stinker after a tough loss and after seeing how good they've been. So that's kind of my just like taking it from a high level, looking at both understanding. I think VCU is going to come out and compete really hard, but I think BYU is not going to be phased by it because I think that they've taken. I mean, VCU even at 30, like in Ken Palm, is still good, but that's kind of just another day in the Big 12 for BYU.
Yeah.
And I think that we'll be able to overcome that.
Yeah, like their 30th ranking, like yesterday, they'd be like the eighth highest ranked team in the Big 12. So like solid, but BYU's played 10 games, has 10 games this year, which are harder than VCU. So BYU's battle tested. So I guess if I break into two parts, like there's things that VCU is good at, and there's things I think BYU can expose. Like VCU, first off, like they're a very experienced team. Like in their starting lineup, they start 3 fifth-year seniors, 1 sixth-year senior, and a true freshman. So they played a lot of college basketball. Like they necessarily haven't played together for multiple years. Like it's a collection of mostly transfers, but they have a lot of college basketball experience on their team, on their bench. One of the most experienced teams in the tournament. So that they've got going for them historically, teams with experience do well. So that's a good check mark on them. And then we talked about their defense, like their defensive metrics across the board are really good. They force turnovers, really good at guarding the paint. Teams don't shoot a super high 3-point percentage on them. So that's a good defensive team. Then offense, like they're solid. Like 3-point shooting, they shoot a lot of threes. They're kind of hot and cold, but they're really good in the offensive glass. Like I mentioned earlier, they have 3 6'10" guys that they rotate in the front court, keep fresh, get a lot of offensive boards. So really good at that. They guard the paint really well. Like their starting center is a true freshman. His name is let me look it up because it blanked my mind. Is Luke
Bam.
Luke Bamgwaboy. Yeah, he's second nationally in block percentage. Like he only plays about 15-20 minutes a game, but 6'10" freshman, super good protecting the paint. And then Christian Furman, the other starting center, really good, guarded the really good blocking shots. So the reason they're one of the top teams defending like the two, and it's like they're first in effective field goal percentage defense, and then BYU offensively is one of the teams in offense. BYU seventh in offensive effective field goal percentage. Like BYU sixth in 2-point defense, VCU's fourth in 2-point offense. One of the reasons BYU's 2-point shooting percentage is so good because obviously teams focus so much on the three, and that opens up a lot of things for BYU inside. So it's a strength on strength matchup here. So defense, they're really good. Offense, like I said, they don't shoot the three to super high percentage. They shoot like 33% in the year, which is 189th in the country out of 364 teams. So not impressive, but they shoot a lot of threes, and they could get really hot, but they could have poor shooting nights as well, which have cost them. But they have some good players, like their two guards, Max Shulga, he's the Atlantic 10 player of the year, averages 15. Joe Basile, the other guard, averages 15. Like they have 4 good guards. They start 3 guards. Even their third guard, Philip Russell, he's a 6-foot guard, super quick. He could give BYU some trouble. That's one thing I'm curious how, like BYU, their starting lineup, I guess I'll get to in a sec. So offensively, decent offense, but like they have some good individual pieces, and they rebound the ball really well. So things which I have questions about, things which I could exploit, like their strength of schedule isn't terrible. Like their Ken Palm strength of schedule is 123rd nationally, but they haven't played like they've only played 2 tournament teams. They played Colorado State and New Mexico, and Colorado State at the time isn't the Colorado State now. Colorado State's only in because they got an auto bid. And at the time, Colorado State was like around a 500 team. They beat Colorado State in neutral floor, and they lost to New Mexico on the road. Those are the only 2 tournament teams they played. They kind of struggled in November. They lost to Seton Hall in neutral court. Seton Hall's the worst power conference team in the country, ranked 206 in Ken Palm. But I guess at the same time, BYU lost to Providence. But again, that Providence team was also they were starting Bryce Hopkins, who only played 3 games this year, was their best player. He happened to be for the BYU game. Still, BYU put up a stinker there. They also lost to Nevada. They were 15-3 in Atlantic 10 play. But again, they
They
didn't.
did. They did beat Duquesne.
Yes, they did beat Duquesne. They have that going
They do
in
have
their
that going
favor.
for them.
Yeah, they beat Duquesne. But the best offense in the Atlantic 10 they played was Dayton. The last time they played Dayton was on March 7th, so less than 2 weeks ago. It'll be, see, today's BYU's game will be on the 21st. So exactly 2 weeks before, or less than 13 days before BYU's game, they played Dayton. They played at VCU. VCU was 9.5-point favorites. They lost to Dayton 79-76. What's interesting about that game, so Dayton is the best offense they played all throughout Atlantic 10 play, counted tournament 21 games. So Dayton is ranked 51st in KenPom offensive efficiency. BYU, for comparison, is ranked 11th in offensive KenPom efficiency. So BYU is quite a bit better of an offense. So I mentioned before some of VCU's strengths. They force turnovers. They guard they protect the paint. They guard the three pretty well. So Dayton did really on the road. Dayton scored 79 points on them. Dayton only had 8 turnovers, and Dayton shot 39% from three. So again, this defense is good, but BYU's played better defenses. Like VCU would be the 5th highest ranked defense in the Big 12. If you think about the good defenses BYU played, like, and this is fair. Like we're like, oh, we saw what BYU did against Houston. Houston forces turnovers. VCU's gonna do the same thing. One, there's no other team like Houston in the country the way they defend. Like Houston, they're just so physical, and VCU forces turnovers. They do it a different way. Like they'll attack you in the paint, and Houston does that, but Houston will blitz you off ball screens. Like Jaeger struggles so much because he backs up and it just throws him out of the offense. Like maybe VCU will change their game plan, but from what I've seen of VCU, just from watching them throughout, like I've watched them a little bit in the season and just recently while I've studied them a little bit, they won't necessarily blitz and trap BYU off ball screens. So that should help Jaeger, especially Jaeger. Dallin does pretty good because he's experienced point guard. Yeah, Jaeger, that should help him navigate BYU's offense. I'm hoping a little better to limit some of his turnovers. Because if he's limiting turnovers, I mean, he could be super effective. But again, like to my point, what I was just saying, BYU's have played. VCU would be the 5th highest ranked defense in the Big 12. So those 4 teams BYU played, BYU's 5-2 against those Big 12 teams that had a better ranked defense than VCU. They were 0-2 against Houston. The other 3 teams were Iowa State, Kansas, and West Virginia. Those 3 teams, BYU was 5-0 combined. They scored 91 points versus Kansas, and then Iowa State, they scored 88 against a full-strength Iowa State team on the road, and then against a limited Iowa State team, they scored 96, and then they beat West Virginia twice. So BYU has played good defenses this year, and BYU has put up a lot of points. And VCU, they haven't seen an offense like BYU all year. Like just the pace, not even just the pace, the tempo BYU plays at, but just like how quick BYU moves the ball. They sprint to the corners faster than anybody. Jaeger and Dallin can make things happen. So it's not to say BYU's offense is unstoppable. Like we've seen BYU struggle, and BYU struggled at Cincinnati this year, Houston, which is an outlier BYU because they're so good. But BYU has struggled offensively, but BYU's way better than any offense VCU has seen this year. So that gives me some hope. Is that going to kind of like, whoa, that could kind of surprise VCU a little bit. So that gives me some hope. And then just the amount of threes both teams take. Nearly half of the threes both teams take are from 3. And if it turns into a 3-point shootout, I'm probably going to side with BYU. So those are the things which I think BYU can exploit. It's like, one, just the personnel BYU has. Like VCU hasn't seen a team like BYU. 2, like, yes, VCU forces turnovers, but the way they force turnovers isn't as debilitating to BYU's other teams. They don't force turnovers the way Iowa State and Houston force turnovers. They typically don't blitz ball screens, which could help Jaeger a little bit more. And then 3, if it turns to a 3-point shootout, and both teams like to shoot a lot of threes, BYU is a more consistent 3-point shooting team. So again, I talked to some of the strengths. Those are some of the weaknesses and questions. That was kind of a long-winded rant, but that's kind of how I break down when I see VCU.
I like that. I watched a little bit. I watched like the highlights and got to see some of their championship game against George Mason. Schluka was the main one that like jumped off the court for me, and then I think was it Russell that you mentioned too.
Yeah, he's their little
He's pretty
6 foot point
nice. He
guard.
didn't.
He's good.
Yeah, he didn't have a ton of points for him, but he's fast and he reminded me a little bit, yeah, of just some of like the quicker, shiftier guards that we've played in the Big 12. But Schluka's nice. Like he's their best player, right? Would you say? Like
Yeah,
just
yeah,
in
he was
terms
the
of.
Atlanta 10 player of the year.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I'm a,
yeah,
I suppose he's also from Ukraine. So shout out
yeah,
Garrett McClintock.
yeah. Yeah, he played at Utah State for 3 years under Ryan Odom, VCU's coach. So like BYU actually has
Oh,
played him
that's right.
before when he was at
Yeah.
Utah State. Yeah,
I was gonna say, yeah, the fact that Ryan Odom. I remember that he was Utah State, but he's also at the UMBC
yeah,
when
16-1 upset.
yeah, when they beat Virginia, right? I think it
Yep.
was. But yeah, so that's that's the only thing. When I heard that, I was kind of like, oh, great, like that would be classic. Like if it was just another, him just pulling off another upset, kind of like channeling some of that like Shaka Smart VCU energy or something like that from
Yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean they're a nice team. I feel like too it's tricky defense defensive stats, and I feel like when they're coming out of more of these mid majors can sometimes be just like so overly inflated. And I'm not saying that that's the case with VCU, but I think even like when we were in the WCC, Gonzaga would sometimes have these like just unbelievable defensive metrics, and they would be really good. Like they're still an incredible defensive team, but then kind of you get into the tournament, sometimes the level of that defense I felt like was a little bit overstated because usually, and I I don't know exactly how Ken Palm some of like their defensive rating things are calculated, but when you're housing Portland and Pacific, by 30 points for like four of your games in the season, I know that that's obviously going to help your defensive ratings and standings in that regard.
yeah,
So I think that's another thing. Just as you mentioned, like we've played better defenses than them. I think just like watching them, they are a good team. I just think even like the level of athleticism, from what you were saying, and you let me know if you agree with this, but it sounds like it's a little more like Houston is like scheme and athleticism combined, right? To be
yeah.
elite
Dudes
at
like length,
defense.
physical. Mm-hmm.
Like you've kind of got like they truly don't have a weakness, and I feel like that was exposed in the first half where it was like BYU was trying and like succeeding in doing some good things and just still struggling.
Yeah,
Whereas
like Houston's starting
VCU,
center, Joe Tugler, he's 6'8" with a 7'5" wingspan. Like
yeah,
it's just like
it's
he's Big 12
insane.
defensive player of the year. Like there's like 10 people on the planet with like those
Like
measurables.
those measures.
Yeah,
So that's kind of where I come to is I bet like I'm sure that they are really well schemed, really well coached. Players are bought into the defensive system, but at the end of the day, they're not like even like you mentioned. They have some solid centers. They have blanking on his name again, but that you mentioned Luke Bamgaboy, who's high block
yeah,
percentage,
tons of
like very
blocks.
good block,
Yeah,
very good with blocks. But at the end of the day, it's just not going to be the same level of athlete that we've been playing against. That we're used to playing against. So, I mean, I think that's where I think that we also have some good edge there. Just VCU, I think, is still going to still be very sound. I don't think it'll be a blowout. I think if a comfortable win would be like like a low double digit, like 10 to 12 would be a really good win. I could see it staying like high single digits for most of the game even. But I mean, I think that's kind of where you can look at just the numbers and kind of go, oh, BYU is going to only be a 2-point favorite. I think it climbed up to like 3.5 or something like that.
yeah,
And that's fine. But I think for me, when I saw that, I thought, I mean, I don't bet, but like that seemed like a good number. Like I'm like, I think it'll be a close game, but I feel like BYU probably wins somewhere in the high single digits, low double digits, if we play our game. But that's kind of something just as like watching a little bit of their film, looking into those stats, and then just kind of like you mentioned, the grain of salt that this is going to be they haven't played an offense as good as us, and they're not always playing. They're playing a lot of other teams that are just not in the same realm as tournament teams. So they're going to be solid on defense, but I just feel like they're not going to have that same level of, obviously, like not even comparing them to Houston, but just even other really good defenses that we faced. I think that we'll be able to handle what they throw at us.
Yeah, they're still really good and athletic. They're not Houston's level, but like I guess there's a lot of keys to the game. Like three things I'll be watching. First, I think Mowat Mag will have a big impact in this game. It is a huge difference for BYU versus last year. Like he'll likely be matched up on Max Shulga, and Shulga he's their leading scorer at 15 a game, but he also leads them assists. He gets a lot of rebounds. So Mag is he's not only limit his scoring, but he's gonna be expected. BYU's gonna expect to have a big impact in just limiting Shulga, like initiating the offense, slowing them down. So I think that will be a key for BYU. Like I think Mowat Mag, if BYU's gonna win, like Mowat Mag's gonna take Shulga, really have him struggle to create shots, force some turnovers, limit his assists. That's one thing that makes me excited that BYU didn't have last year and frankly has rarely had in its history. So that's one thing I'm watching. What's the impact of Mowat Mag? I think he'll be an X factor in this game if BYU wins. Second, I'm curious how BYU plays like Trey Stewart versus Trevin Nell. Because on one hand, I think offensively Trevin could have a big game. Because, maybe VCU will switch up their scheme. But they've done a lot this year. Like, they're so good at defending the paint. Like, they crash the paint, and then they hurry and try to find shooters. But that could bite them a little bit with how quick BYU passes. Like, if they crowd the paint and BYU finds an open shooter, that's Trevin Nell could feast in that type of game. So, on one hand, it could mean BYU has a lot of turnovers, and they don't find those open shooters. Right. But BYU could limit their turnovers. Trevin Nell could have a big game. But the flip side, defensively, like, I don't know who Trevin Nell guards in this game. Like I mentioned, VCU starts three good guards. They have Shulga, like you probably have Mowat Mag on him. Their second co-leading scorer, Joe Basilme. I had to look at his name because I'm probably saying it wrong. But he also averages 15 points, 6'4" guard. I'm guessing Richie is probably going to guard him. The third guard, Philip Russell, 6 foot guard, super shifty.
Fast.
He probably is Trevin really going to be guarding him? Is Trevin really going to be able to guard one of the other guards? Because then they're probably going to start 2 6'10" guys, and you probably want Yegor. One of their 6'10" guys is more of a perimeter guy, and then their other 6'10" freshmen, like you'll have Kaba guard him because he's not a 3-point shooter. He's a lob threat. So it's like I don't know who Trevin Nell is gonna guard. It could be kind of that's probably one thing VCU's gonna try to expose. Like Trevin Nell is he don't think he gets enough credit for his defense. He's not a good lockdown defender by individual means, but he's a smart defender, and he's a good, he knows how to help on the backside. He knows how to put in his place. But I think VCU, they have some ISO scores, which could give him trouble. But so offensively, Trevin could have a big game, but what do you do defensively? So I think Trey Stewart, he could lock up some of those good individual guards. I think it could be a really big Trey Stewart game. But on the flip side, it's like, can Trey Stewart hit those open shots offensively? Because that means when Trey Stewart's in there, especially gonna lock down and guard the paint and force Trey to shoot it. And he's been better at 3-point shooting this year, but there's still times
it's not his
he's missed open threes. So it's like I'm curious to see how Kevin Young balances that. And in the middle, you have Dawson Baker, who's still not a great defender, but he could score a little bit. So he's kind of like a little bit of both.
He's
can he guard a little bit? That's one chess piece. And the third, honestly, I think Foose this is not his type of game. Like the type of game Foose eats in, it's like that West Virginia game in Provo where they singled him all game. They took away the BYU 3 and Foose had 20 points. If he's 1-on-1 against any of these VCU bigs, they're not big burly guys, I think he eats them. but the way they like to double, and that's when Foose struggles most. Like he's not tall enough to pass over double teams, and he could be turnover prone. So if they keep double him and he's turning the ball over, it's probably a game you have Kiba and you have Mihailo Boskovic like out there spreading the floor a little bit. It could be
Right.
a big Boskovic game. So, I would love if Foose has a big game, but that's the other thing. It's like I just don't see Foose being a big factor in this game. That's just not the type of game. I think if BYU does play Wisconsin, I think he could have some success there. Just the way they defend, they don't turn you over really. But this seems more like a Kaba. Foose will still play some, and then a Mihailo game as well. So those are the three kind of off the radar keys. Besides BYU needs to hit threes, BYU needs to defend well. It's like one, I think Mowat Mag's a big X factor. Can he really slow down Shukla in this offense? If he does, BYU's got a really good shot. Two, how does Kevin Young kind of balance that dynamic between Trevin Nell and probably getting open shots, but being exposed defensively between Trey Stewart, like guard some of the individual guards, but can he hit open shots? I'm really fascinated to see how Kevin Young goes at that. And then third, how does Foose factor in this game? How does BYU play their big? Does Mihailo play more? So those are kind of the three off the radar stories that I'm watching. But I think there's enough there that Kevin Young could play with. Because I guess you kind of give my prediction is I think BYU wins like 78-73. I think VCU's got some really good players. They could give BYU some trouble defensively. Like they have some good offensive pieces, which I think BYU may struggle to score, to contain at times. But I think BYU's got some good enough individual defenders that they could reel them in. And then BYU, if it turns into a 3-point shootout, I do like BYU more. So we talked through a lot of reasons, but ultimately I'll pick BYU to win. Hopefully BYU just
VCU?
I know. Maybe we need to do like a reverse psychology that we've had success with Iowa State and Arizona. But I honestly, just for the fan psyche, BYU needs to win this game. Like it feels a lot of ways similar to the 2010 game, Jimmer's junior year. BYU hadn't won in 17 years. They had lost, and they finally got the monkey off their back when they beat Florida first round. Granted, and then they lost in the second round to Kansas State, but then that's kind of set them up for their Sweet 16 run the last year. They didn't have the pressure. Like next year, BYU's going to have AJ, lots of pressure. Again, I want BYU to do good this year because I want them to do good this year, and they think they could make a run. But what the team could like next year's team, BYU's going to build it to be a national title contender. It'd be nice if BYU could at least get the monkey off their back this year so the team doesn't have to even think about, oh, can BYU even win the first game? It's like, no, we're going to win a natty. We don't even need to think about that. So it's like, I want BYU to win this year because of this year, but a win the first round could at least just help our fan psyche, could help the program psyche. Could not only set yourself up a run.
Just getting a win, like, right? Yeah. Like, don't come in and follow up. I mean, I think especially after losing as a 6 seed last year, you don't want to march out and lose again as a top seed. I think like say Kevin Young, like we eked in as we were an at-large bid, like 10, 11 seed. If you lose that game, it's different. It's super different to me.
Yeah.
But in this case, like hot team, we've played really well. Now we've brought those expectations, which like Kevin Young is always saying he doesn't really care about expectations because he always wants to win anyways, which I like. But he also welcomes, like he talks about but I welcome that because like that's what I want. I want to win.
Yeah.
So like honestly, I think.
Yeah, there's like Kevin Young couldn't care less that BYU has horrible tournament history.
Oh yeah,
like he's just like it honestly helps that he's not a BYU guy. Like he didn't grow up watching BYU. He like expectations is like, yeah, I coached in the NBA finals. Like we almost won. Yeah. Like it's like this is NCAA tournament, a big whoop. Like I think honestly his demeanor just and almost his like what's the word I'm looking for? Just like lack of just like caring about BYU's history. I mean, he cares about BYU basketball. Just like he's not. It's not in his mind at all. Like, I think that helps BYU and their psyche. Yeah,
and it's for him. Like, he's coming in. I think, like as a fan, to your point, we talk about last year losing to Duquesne. Like Kevin Young's like, I wasn't here. That wasn't my team. I didn't coach that game. I don't care. Like I really, like to your point, I don't think he cares that happened last year. Now maybe you have to address it as a coach with your players, like just making sure like the team
Yeah,
is
some of them are part of it. Yeah.
not affected by that, or is able to get the monkey off their back in that regard. But I mean, and this is kind of, I think, one of my angles even looking at was even just the coaching angle of this game, which was just thinking about, I feel like we've seen Kevin Young's coaching ability in two forms, just like on full display over the last month, which is, I'd say, first, just like the mentality aspect, which we kind of talked about a little bit earlier on in the streak that BYU got going on, but just he's very level-headed. I think that he's baked that into the team at this point, which is really encouraging. In the past, I don't think that's something that really, like, I don't know if it's a Mark Pope thing necessarily, but under Mark Pope, I don't feel like we had like in a super mentally strong team in terms of
Best locker room in America.
consistency. Yeah. I mean, I hope it was. I mean, there's definitely games where it was, but
Yeah.
it was a lot of up and down, a lot of missing games here and there that you felt like you shouldn't, which does happen. But it's something to be said that last year we never got past a 2-game winning streak in the Big 12, right? And this year it was like Kevin Young, he did a three. It was like three, and then or four, and then three, and then we ended on a whatever it was, an 8-game winning streak. So it was like those are the kinds of things to me I kind of see. Okay, he's doing things that are giving the team mental, like a mental sharpness, mental fortitude, where it's like they're not. I just felt like the team was very confident in that regard. And then even as you mentioned, the matchups too that he's going to be navigating. I feel like watching the games, it's really cool seeing how he makes those shifts, and he's made a lot of similar. He's had to make similar decisions, like you said, between Trevin Nell and Trey Stewart. Kind
Yeah.
of, okay, which way am I going to go with my more defensive first point guard play, or am I going to go, with more of like the shooter, maybe a little smarter in how he's playing, just because he's such a vet and he's had so many games that he's played and started in for Nell. But he's balancing that with the bigs. It's like such a dynamic rotation that he's got there, because the profiles of Keba, Foose, and Bogdanovic are like as different as I think you could have for like three guys
Yeah.
playing the same position. It's not like you've got two, Keba type bigs that are big, athletic, and effective around the rim. No, he's really kind of like, even though him and Foose can both have very effective presences near the rim, Foose's presence on defense is nothing like Keba's. Foose's offensive presence is effective, just like Keba's can be, but like they rely on very different, right? Foose is back to the basket. Keba is like more lob threat, offensive rebound, put back type of dynamics. So I mean, that dynamic too. I feel like I've just seen. I mean, I'm left after a lot of these games just thinking, man, Kevin Young is such a good in-game basketball coach. So that was kind of I like
Truly.
your player angles, but that was kind of for me. I think at the end of everything, when I was looking at the matchup and just thinking about how we'll do for this game, at least specifically, when you mentioned getting the monkey off our back and just getting a win, that was kind of, I thought of more, my mind went to Kevin Young, and I thought, I feel really comfortable and confident that he's going to get us at least one win in the tournament this year.
I think so too, man. I think I speak for BYU fans. Like, I sure hope so. Like, we're just a battered fan syndrome in the NCAA tournament, and that Duquesne one was just like,
It's just a gut punch. Just
yeah. So
so bad.
yeah, I mean, the Ole Miss loss in 2015 was bad just because we blew an awful lead, but at least it was like a good Ole Miss team. Like this, like Duquesne. Sure, the matchup wasn't great. They just weren't, like, BYU had no business losing to that team. So. Yeah, we need the monkey off our back. Like, again, like I think, like we've talked about the things VCU does. Like, they are a good team. Like, there's a reason like BYU and Ken Palm's only favored by a point, and the spread's 2 or 3 points. Like,
2-3 points.
they are a very good team. But I'm hoping. I mean, the angle too. I mean, I saw VCU fans. It seems like we don't really BYU fans. We don't really talk about altitude, but VCU fans, it's like, hey, how does VCU handle playing at altitude for 40 minutes, like playing in Denver? It's like, and I think altitude's overplayed, but it is a thing. Like they don't play in altitude anywhere in the Atlantic 10. Obviously, BYU plays in Provo,
like
so
sea
maybe
level. Yeah.
yeah. And both teams has pretty good depth, but as the game goes along, I mean, it doesn't hurt BYU. That's for sure. So
True.
yeah.
What was your did you give like a BYU wins by did you say like 5 or 6?
Yeah, I think
What was your
78-73 BYU wins is my prediction. I guess what's your score prediction?
I'm going to go with an 82-72 win.
Okay.
A little bit bigger, but I think it'll just be at the end. I think the offense will just take over at one point in the last 5 minutes. But before that, I definitely think it'll be single digit, might go back and forth a little bit. Give me a Richie takeover for the last like 3 or 4 minutes, just hitting some clutch shots like he did against Iowa State. That's
Yeah.
I would love that.
Yeah. No, that would be great. I guess so. I guess overall, what do you think about BYU's region, the East region? So Duke's the 1 seed, Bama's the 2 seed, Wisconsin. So if BYU beats, I don't want to look ahead too much, but BYU, we could preview Wisconsin. Maybe Montana upsets them, the Grizzlies. And Montana,
You never know.
Montana's used to playing
Montana
elevation on Montana. Yeah,
Yeah.
go. Yeah, my mom grew up in Montana, so big fan of the state.
There you go.
But in Wisconsin, I don't agree with some of the takes that people are saying. I'd rather play. BYU has a better chance against Wisconsin than VCU. Like, I don't agree that, but Wisconsin, it is a completely different matchup. Like, Wisconsin's very good offense. Like John Tonji, their guard, averages 20 points a game, one of the top players in the Big Ten. But defensively, they're completely different. Like Wisconsin has one of the lowest turnover rates in the country, defensive turnover. Like they're bottom 6 in the Big 12 at defending the 3. So their defense is like solid. They rebound the ball really good, but they're completely different. Like they have like guys that look like they grew up in Wisconsin, like they're bigs, like 7-foot white guys, but good shooters. So it'd be a different game. Like BYU hasn't played many bigs. There's not many bigs in the Big 12, like 5 men that could step out and shoot 3. Wisconsin's got a couple of those like 7-foot, just big, burly John Bunyan guys that could hit out and shoot threes. But those guys, they don't force a lot of turnover. So it'd be like offensively, I think BYU could really thrive in that game. Like they're not going to pressure BYU much. BYU could get some open looks, but I think BYU would struggle Wisconsin too with some of their 5-out offense. So I hope we get it. It'd be a fascinating game. I think it'd be game in the 80s or 90s. But we got to get there. And then Alabama is an interesting 2 seed. Like they play at the fastest tempo in the country.
Their tempo,
their offense, they average 91 points a game, which is just nuts for college.
So nuts.
And their defense, like similar to Wisconsin, you would think a team, it's like, oh, they want to go up and down, so they force turnovers to get in transition. But they also have one of the lowest defensive turnover rates in the country. So like they can be prone to defensive lapses, like they don't turn teams over a ton. I'd be really curious that they play St. Mary's second round if St. Mary's beats Vanderbilt, because talk about contrast of styles, like the St. Mary's, like what's gonna win out? Like St. Mary's slow it down, like that would be fascinating to see. And if we got a BYU St. Mary's Sweet 16, like
that would be hard for me to watch. That would be so painful. Like,
I know. They'll probably get. They don't. I don't think they have a guy with goggles, but they'd probably pull out some guy like Herman. Remember Hermanson? I think the guy with like. They'd Dellavedova would be. Yeah, he was there for 17 years. He probably still will come back. Like all the demons, like the Dellavedova, Omar Sandman. Yeah.
That would be a crazy storyline. Yeah.
And then Duke, even Cooper Flag doesn't play the first weekend, I think they could still get by
they still look
their
really
first
good.
couple rounds. But they had Cooper Flag. I mean, their offense and defense is so good. Like they're a good team. So it's a fun region. It's not an unbeatable region. I don't think it's like the most stacked region. No. Like Alabama is like really good. They were a Final Four team last year, but they're beatable. They have holes in their defense. Wisconsin's really good, but they got some. They have some things that they do which kind of work in BYU's favor. So. But man, I hope we're talking about that Thursday night if we on our record podcast looking ahead.
Definitely.
Yeah, because I want the season to keep going. It's a fun team. I mean, sure they lost to Houston, but they're firing at all cylinders right now.
Definitely. Yeah, I feel like it's a good bracket like to be in. I think like not having Auburn, Houston, and Florida. I mean, Duke. I'm not saying like they're bad. They're so
Yeah.
good,
Or I mean, the
but
two seed I didn't want was Tennessee. Like they're
uh-huh.
one of the two teams that have a higher defensive rating than Houston. So I was like, I want no part of
Yeah,
Tennessee.
you want to stay
Like,
away from like those defensive heavy teams. Exactly. And that's what I mean, a lot of the pundits, a lot of things I've listened to and just when you kind of go through some of these teams, like you just did, it's a lot of like more offensive focused teams that are on the
yeah.
single digit seed lines.
Hmm.
And so I mean, yeah, it's probably mentally I kind of felt like similar to what people are saying in terms of the VCU matchup is tougher than the Wisconsin matchup, and I agree with what you said, and
Yeah.
the way that I agree
I
with
think
what they say is more
stylistically it's harder, but I think Wisconsin's still the better team. I guess is how
exactly.
it. Yeah.
And I'm with you, and I think the only thing that comes to my mind is more just coming back to the get the monkey off your back because as the sixth seed, all the pressure's on you in the 6-11 game, but as soon as you win that game, pressure's off, right? Like it's
Yeah.
like okay, you win the game, now you're going to play the 3 seed. You're not supposed to win, and BYU's kind of been
Yeah. You're
really
playing
good in
Denver,
those
elevation versus
situations.
Wisconsin. That's like they just barely played a Big Ten championship game on Sunday. How's their legs going to
Hmm.
be feeling coming off that? Plus a game Thursday and playing an elevation Saturday. Like, I don't
There's
know.
a lot going on,
Uh,
and that's what's fun too is like sometimes you'll look at these teams that make the Sweet 16, and like probably in terms of like when I what I've looked at in terms of a 3-14 upset, like I don't see that as like Montana is some awesome 14 seed. I don't know anything about them, but that's the
but they're
beauty
not
of it is
awesome.
like yeah. Like I mean last year it was like Jack Golke is the reason that Kevin Young's our head coach because he
Yeah,
popped
that's
off
so true.
against Kentucky
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah, May
So it's like
Montana
who knows?
wins.
Montana
Yeah.
might have some kid that honestly is not even that good and is
Yeah.
just going to go crazy.
Yeah. It'd be
But I
the
only
most
say
BYU
that.
thing if Montana upsets in the first game
And then,
and then BYU plays after and loses to VCU. And
and
we're
then
just like,
Lulu,
okay,
yeah,
I quit.
yeah,
Had
like
the
you're like,
Sweet
oh,
16 fresh on a
the road is
platter.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, but I only say that to say because it's cool to look ahead and kind of go, hey, there's teams that match up well with like BYU can hang with these teams. There's not a defensive juggernaut in our at least in our road to the Sweet 16. Um, Looking at like a Wisconsin or like even if you kind of look down the road after Elite Eight and
Mhm.
Final Four with more like Alabama and Duke even. But I mean, that's then also where it's just like there's always that little part too where it's just like you don't know who is going to actually win. Take care of business, like you said. Like BYU needs to take care of what they need to. We need to
Mhm.
just start by beating VCU, take that one game.
Mhm.
But I mean, after that, yeah, literally, I mean, it could literally be Robert Morris upset Alabama, and it's St. Mary's, Robert
Let's go.
Morris, BYU, and Montana, and you're just like, okay, like we can do something with this. But it
Yeah.
could also literally be like chalk, right? And you're kind of like, okay, well, we can still do something with this. It's just not as easy. But that's always my favorite thing is just sometimes some teams that really are not that good end up making the Sweet 16.
Yep.
But just because like when the 2 seed gets upset, that 7 or 10 is just in such a good spot.
Yeah,
It's
then
like,
they have
oh,
their road because the
yeah, you're
15
just
seed's
yeah,
good for usually one win and then
yeah.
like run out of
There's because
gas.
they're just not like it's so they cannot sustain that, and it's
Yeah.
like it's also like just you can't come back from such a high of like beating a 2 seed as a 15 and like
Yeah.
because the 7 and 10s are still good teams. You know what I mean? Like they're
Totally.
very solid. So,
Yeah.
but that's all. That's kind of I think what I'm looking at is let's take care of ECU and then but let's just then after that I'm hoping for some chaos in this bracket. And that's the nice thing I think with like the crazy. It's a lot more offensive focused. You see Baylor as a 9 seed. You were Arizona as a 4 seed in this bracket too.
Good four
Like
seed.
yeah, there's other good teams in here that like it's not out of the realm of possibility for Duke or Bama, the top 2 seeds, to get knocked out. Just the same way that BYU could knock out Wisconsin. Like you've got high firing teams. So I think
Yeah.
this one feels very open as opposed to like you said, like looking more at like the brackets with Auburn, with Houston, with like St. John's and Tennessee. Like some of
Yeah.
those other teams feel
Just gritty
really
defensive
strong
teams.
and
Yeah.
gritty. And this one, you're just more like, yeah, it's a little more high flying offense. I
Yeah.
think Liberty, you were saying Liberty's like one of the craziest. I know there's some mid major, like kind
Yeah.
of upset
They're
teams we
yeah.
like.
Yeah, Liberty's like their top 5 in 3-point shooting and bottom. They're the top 5 in 3-point shooting, bottom 10 in free throw shooting. So like so it's just the religious school thing. BYU's not that bad in free throw shooting, but it's just like I don't know
But
how
there
you
is
could be
still
that.
some disparity where like we've
Yeah,
shot better at three. We've had games where we've shot better from three and been close to 50%, and
yeah,
than our free throw percentage.
yeah. I know.
When you mention this is like the religious bracket. I'm now realizing because you've got Baylor in the East, Baylor,
Yeah,
Liberty, BYU, and St. Mary's. So it's a pretty strong.
yeah. We got God is in
That's
this
pretty
in the
strong.
East region.
I'm not seeing any other religious schools that
Yeah.
made the tournament.
Yeah, I hope that NCAA tournament success doesn't correlate to which church is true because we would be in some trouble.
Yeah. Well, unless it starts now, then
Yeah,
maybe
it's
we're in a
then
good spot.
then it's good. Yeah,
Effective for 2025 only,
yeah, and if BYU wins,
and BYU wins. Yeah.
yeah. All right, we're at an
All
hour. Should
right.
we? I guess. Thank you. Should we call it? So this episode shows an hour.
I like it.
All right.
We're like right on the money.
Yeah.
Well, go Cougs.
Rise and
and
hoop.
hoop.